Alrighty. I think we're good. I think we're live. Hopefully. Okay, so we're catching up. Okie dokie. Let's see. Um, Hello everyone. Let me just double check to make sure our stream is good to go. I want to try a different one out because I have a lot of art photos on my phone and stuff. Um, like I work in the arts. I've traveled quite a bit related to the arts, and I think between various phones and hard drives and things, I think I have something like probably like 20 to 30,000 photos of visiting different art museums and art galleries over the years, and I haven't really done anything with it. And I've thought to myself it would be nice to maybe do, I don't know, some kind of content around this. And this is kind of impromptu. Like realistically, I maybe should have done more prep and like run these through Photoshop or something to like square them up or like improve lighting or something like that. But as a starter kind of trial stream, I thought it would be nice to maybe try. Um, I don't know, just try it out, see how it goes. To basically do a little bit of a like an art gallery walkthrough. I had some days off this week, and I on Tuesday I went to the new museum. The new museum, for anyone who isn't familiar, is a museum in Lower Manhattan. Let's actually, I'm doing full uh, screen share, which isn't always the safest, but I kind of wanted to. I feel like it's the easiest way for me to show content. Um, the new museum. Um, the new museum. We'll just take a peek at some of this. The new museum. Yeah, it's on Bowery. This is an old photo because they just renovated it. So this whole building next to it came down, and they added this new angular building next to it. Um, but Bowery, so it's in Lower Manhattan. Um, yeah, so founded 1977, so almost 50 years old, and they were closed for I want to say about 2 years, um, and they reopened. Yeah, closed March 2024, and they just reopened March 2026. But the new museum, it's a non-collecting museum. So they basically just put on shows, and they are. Uh, One second, let me find where I want to put all this stuff. OBS and ViadoTube will go over here. Well, that wasn't useful. I wanted to. Let's do, yeah, new space for these windows to go. Um, they just reopened, so I went there, and then I walked across town to Soho and uh, Tribeca, and I walked around and saw a bunch of shows there. And then on Thursday, I went to the Whitney. The Whitney is also a contemporary art museum. It's also essentially Lower Manhattan. It's on the north end of Lower Manhattan. It's not quite at the start of Midtown yet. Um, so I went to the Whitney, and they were putting on the Whitney Biennial, which happens every 2 years. The Whitney Biennial is this very it, it's meant to be this kind of like temperature check or like reflection of what's happening in art in America every 2 years, kind of like it's meant to like it, it it's meant to be this thing that is yeah, like a reflection of what's happening in art, in culture. And it's I think kind of an interesting thing. I usually like them. I feel like they tend to be they end up being kind of punching bags. Like I feel like people are more overwhelmingly negative about them than positive about them, and that's not because people are negative about what's happening in art per se, so much as it is that like every year people just kind of complain that the Whitney like has failed to capture what's happening in art, and I think that's maybe just because it's impossible to actually capture everything that's happening in art in one exhibition. But anyway, so I went back to the Whitney Biennial. I went by for the opening maybe about a month ago, when it first opened, and it was so crowded with so many people I couldn't really like actually see the art or experience the art. So I went back on Thursday, um, and then after 2 hours on Thursday or something, I walked up to Chelsea, um, and saw some shows there. I didn't see as much as I wanted to. I was kind of surprised that like Chelsea, a lot of galleries were closed already. Um, a lot of galleries were closed already for their May openings. Like I like, but it's not that they're opening like May 2nd or something. They were opening like May 13th. So it's like a lot of them were already closed, and it seemed to imply that they're going to be closed for like 3 weeks in between show openings, which is like very very irregular for New York. Um, but anyway, let's go through. Let's start with Tuesday, and I'm gonna do some commentary as we go, um, and we'll do zoom ins and things. This isn't art at an exhibition. I went to Shuzhou Fuzhou, which is a Chinese restaurant on Grand, on the Lower East Side, um, for lunch before I actually went museum hopping, and I saw this cool little drawing, and I was like, okay, let's take a picture of this before we enter into the art galleries. But had some great dumplings and some great peanut noodles at Shuzhou Fuzhou. So anyway, so this is the new museum atrium, I guess you could say. It's like this big new stairwell on this like new building addition that they had. Um, it's a really beautiful addition to the building, and it's like a pretty beautiful stairwell. I will say I'm kind of critical off the bat that they chose to take so much space for this. Like, it's actually quite big. This photo doesn't capture it, but it's like it's quite a big stairwell. Um, and obviously I recognize that there's like an important utility to having a stairwell, and it does open the door for like some really cool, um like it opens the door for some potentially cool and interesting sculptures to be installed, like, which is what we get here. Like there's this really big sculptural piece, and I liked this piece, but at the same time I am a little bit puzzled as to why it feels like a lot of the new building that they added is dedicated to this very very showy stairwell, that space maybe should have been used for the actual galleries. um and I think this is like this feeling is particularly exacerbated by the fact that like the galleries themselves for the show that they put on felt quite crowded. Like I felt like the exhibition was overly packed with like too much art and too many people, and I actually didn't do that many overview shots of like the different rooms in the exhibition because so many of them were so crowded with so many people, and like the photos wouldn't be very good at capturing what was happening in the rooms because many of the rooms just have like too much stuff and too much going on. And like seeing that for the debut show coming out of this museum closure and this massive expansion felt to me like, I don't know. It's like a weird thing for me that I am kind of critical of their choice to spend their resources on this thing, this stairwell. But anyway, we'll move past it. Right off the bat, like when we get on the second floor landing, we get this really big wallpaper installation, which I rather liked. This is by an artist named Tishan Shu, who's a Boston-based or born in Boston. I guess I don't know where he's based now, but I became familiar with his work last year, and I think it's really quite cool. His stuff is like this very like strange blend of like digital and physical. Like it's like obviously meant to look like the distortions of a computer screen, but also it's like a distorted computer screen rendering like flesh, and you get these very strange passages that like could resemble like a nose or an ear, or you get these like orifices. It's all very very Cronenberg, right? It's like very very gross, very body horror, which I think is like pretty neat. The exhibition text, which is like technically my next slide, and a lot of what we'll be doing as I go through this, I think, is you know, when I go through exhibitions, I usually try to take photos of all of the wall text, at least the wall text of pieces that I like and I'm interested in and I want to revisit. I don't always like read them entirely while I'm in the exhibition, just because I want to like experience the thing kind of in and of itself in the moment, and like not necessarily let the wall text guide my understanding in that moment. Sometimes I do if I'm really perplexed by something, if I'm really taken with something, I'll want to know in the moment exactly what I'm looking at. But a lot of the time, I like just take a photo and then I have it to revisit later. And I think part of the structure of this video is, or these videos, like if I do more of them, is that, you know, we'll be looking at the piece, and like again, I have the wall text, but I think it makes more sense that I read some of this out to you while I just keep the image up on the screen. So I'm just gonna, one second, double check to my live feed to make sure the screen is displaying properly. Maybe? I think so. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So the title of this piece is Ears Screen Skin New York. So that's Ears Screen Skin New York 2025. Tishan Shu, known for richly evocative forms that conjure biological and virtual motifs. Tishan Shu has described technology's progressive integration with the body as the central preoccupation with his artistic research. As he said recently, I consider myself a cyborg. Google is my memory. In the early 1980s, Shu had been working as a word processor at a Wall Street law firm where he encountered computers before they were accessible to the wider public. Among his early works are bulging paintings and tiled sculptures that evoke the textural and physical effect of his hours spent immersed in such a technological orbit. Maintaining the essential corporeality of human encounters with proto-digital mediated experiences, these works suggest not only the simulation engendered by technology, but also its impact on the body. Saturated with static, white noise, bits of digital data, scratchy surfaces, floating orifices, and fragmented body parts, the pieces dissolve the threshold between screen and flesh. In the late 1980s and 1990s, Shu began using silkscreen techniques to further emphasize the confluence of manual and digital life. His most recent wall-based works and sculptural works grapple with the emergent biotechnological paradigm in Ear Screen Skin New York 2025. Shu uses innovative fabrication techniques and materials to create imagery that calls to mind bodily orifices, organic matter, or biotic growths. At the root of this body as landscape mural is the question of technology's effects, whether distorting, surveilling, or life-giving, on human beings. I think all of that quite makes sense. I think all of it's quite in the work. The text is a little bit florid. I think that the passage about corporeality of human encounters with proto-digital mediated experiences is like a little heavy-handed, and just saying that like he's looking at both how the body experiences technology as well as how technology is like representing bodies, which I think is quite effective. And I think that they're visceral. I think you can come upon what he's approaching rather effectively without needing like without that description. I think it's quite obvious what he's doing. So yeah, I rather like this work. I think it's a nice intro to the show, and we'll actually round back to the show text. There were these people who were like, standing in front of it for like 10 minutes, and I like didn't want to ask them to move so I could take a photo of the wall text. But when I leave the galleries after I complete this floor, I take a photo of it. So we'll get to that next. Next up, we have this inset painting in the wall. And I was initially taken with it, like the mix of these kind of like bioorganic forms, and then like these smeared things, and then the inset kind of this like geometric cube diagram, I guess. Initially made me think of like it's very strongly to me feels like a Francis Bacon reference. The mid-century painter, you know, like he did this sort of thing quite a bit. These like distorted bodies in cages, and Mary Lovelace O'Neill would also do quite a bit of this kind of thing, especially from like the 1980s forward. But I wasn't as familiar with this artist, so this is a piece by Maina Miriam Munsky. So this is a piece from 1967, actually, called Geburt Zwei, I suppose, Birth 2 from 1967. I wasn't familiar with Maina Miriam Munsky, but a German painter associated with the West Berlin-based critical realists, a 1960s movement that confronted historical trauma and complexities of post-war life using figurative techniques. Often working from photographs, Munsky was best known for paintings depicting bodily processes and medical operations in striking detail. Though historically overlooked, her work manifests physical transformations during an era of rapid scientific and technological development. In 1967, Munsky began a series of works depicting scenes of gestation and birth, a subject marginalized within art history. A few years earlier, Munsky had traveled to Amsterdam for an abortion, a procedure still illegal in West Germany at that time. This experience, together with her previous volunteer work in hospitals and study of fetal specimens at the Darmstadt Natural History Museum, inspired Munsky to portray reproductive processes through expressive abstracted forms that contrast with her more clinical later works. The artist was 24 years old when she painted Geburt Zwei, part of a larger series combining embryonic shapes and geometric structures. The composition features an amorphous, overlapping folds of flesh that imagine the body's cavities as pillowy landscapes of internal organs. Collapsing interior and exterior, Munsky's painting conceived of birth as a delivery from inside the womb to an outside world, in which the boundaries of the mother and child's bodies blur, with pearly blush-colored forms, intersected by black cubic frame. Geburt Zwei probes the limits of visible to represent subjective corporeal experience. If you can't tell between this piece and the Tishan Shu that we started with, this show is very much about the body. I think the title of the show is literally New Humans, and it's kind of like looking at like transhumanism or posthumanism, and thinking about kind of the way that embodiment throughout the 20th century really took on new like philosophical dimension. You know, when you think, I think about this a lot with like, pardon me, I had to clear my nose. I think about this a lot where like DNA is such a new discovery in the history of humanity, right? Like the like we take it as granted now, but like I think to myself, like there must have been like real there were like philosophical implications to that, you know, following the kind of like discovery and like understanding of DNA, that like understanding that like human beings and the human body are like a series of like almost textual codes, or like they can be just transcribed as like textual codes, kind of demystifies the totality of the like human experience in a way that is I think incredibly could have been quite disturbing to people. And I also think about this with like computers and the idea that like as we understand like the brain as a series of like electrical impulses, and then we like develop computers that are also like creating electrical impulses, again I think it like kind of disrupts the kind of like transcendent like spiritual experience of being human in a way. And it doesn't, not necessarily like plenty of people have like, I think particularly as we've like lived with these experiences of the world, I don't think that these are necessarily disruptive or like they don't have to be upsetting. But I think a lot of artists were like reflecting upon these things all throughout the 20th century and even into recent years. Like the show isn't just 20th century. It's like there's some stuff that's like a little bit older, I think, and there's some stuff that's 21st century. But it is primarily 20th century in this show. So cool start to the show. This is like basically the first piece you'd encounter like right through the doors. Like it's lighter on this side and darker on this side because this is sort of a dark room. We'll see a picture in a moment. But this is light cast in through the doors to the gallery. So anyway, yeah, that's Meine Miriam Munsky. So this is the first room, and we can already see kind of like a preoccupation with a series of like bodily like drawings. These works on paper on the wall are Wangechi Mutu. I didn't photograph them individually. The new museum had a really fabulous show of Wangechi Mutu. I think it might have been their last show before they closed. It was like one of the last shows before they closed. And then we get this like this sculptural assembly that's obviously very, very body like you sort of have this like head at the top, and there's sort of like a belly and sort of an implication of legs. There's sort of an implication of breasts. There's all these tubes and pipes. Like this is obviously going to be kind of a great deal of the continuity of the show. This kind of Cronenbergian like body machine thing shows up a lot. There's other things that happen in the show as well, but like if this stuff like gives you the ick, you might want to skip until I'm done with the new museum, which is going to take me a minute because it's quite a big show. But anyway, yeah, this is the overview of the first room, and yeah, so there was this video piece. There are all these sculptures in the center. I think this pillar here we can just barely see. Here's this like bronzy orb, and one side of it is like completely flat. That's a Brancusi, the Romanian sculptor. I can't remember who this was. I didn't take photos of everything because there's certain things that I've either seen before or like I know them well enough that I'm like not necessarily interested in like documenting them. So this is like an unfortunate and kind of incomplete part of my documentation is that like I'm taking these photos for myself and for my own memory. So this isn't like going to be like a comprehensive walkthrough of the show, but I wanted to share my thoughts, and like part of recording this video ideally is that we're learning about this stuff together. I just realized I didn't do an audio check at the start of the stream, so let me just double check real quick. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm hearing my own voice on the stream, so that's good. Anyway, next up, we have a Francis Picabia. I love Picabia. I think everybody loves Picabia. Actually, they're David Lewis Gallery here in New York. Like the last show before he closed. Unfortunately, that gallery just shut down. Literally did a show called I think it was literally titled "Everybody Loves Picabia." So mid 20th century guy. Died in the 50s. Title of this piece was Intervention of a Woman by Ways of a Machine. But like 1915, 1917, this is like a funny motif that I want to point out to like people who aren't as familiar with contemporary art. Every once in a while, I think that there's this like peculiar perception among people who aren't into modern or contemporary art that like this stuff is like a function of like the 60s and like 60s or later, like the idea that like abstract art comes out of like expanded consciousness of like people taking LSD or something in the 60s or even later. You also get this whole thing about people being like, oh yeah, like modern art was like invented by the CIA. All of that's bullshit. You're stupid if you think that that's true. Like, sorry, like the CIA put money into contemporary art. Yeah, like that is true. Like they helped to fuel it, but to say that they like created it or that it's like all of abstract art is like a CIA psyop is you need to like read some books. Like don't just read headlines. Don't just like listen to like TikTok reels for your understanding of art history. abstract art as we know it. There's abstract art from all around the world, from like tons of cultures. Like there's like indigenous paintings of like Aboriginal people in Australia. They've been doing like abstract paintings for like thousands of years. I'm not just talking about like cave paintings or something, but like the idea of like, oh yeah, we're gonna do these like abstract pattern paintings that like, I don't know. Anyway, there's like abstract art from all over the world, from like all these different cultures, but like even in a European context or like a Western context or something, like Malevich did the black square painting, like literally just like painted a black square on a canvas, and like that was supposed to be this like transcendent thing of like just a plain black square on a canvas in like, I think it was like 1903, 1904. um so this is like 50 years before the CIA existed. you know this is like before LSD had ever been synthesized. It's before the Cold War started. It's before the USSR formed. Like people were already like pushing art to consider the ideas of like absolute abstraction. So anyway, this is a really cool Picabia, I think from 1915 slash 1917. It says, and I think this is a lot of like really extreme, a lot of really extreme abstraction did admittedly come out of like World War One era, and like the futurists were pushing this abstraction because they were also like looking at how technology was changing the world, and like cubists were looking at how like industrial revolution had like changed the world. I think it's just a really nice piece. It reminds me of my desktop background. Like obviously, now let's do full screen. We'll go to a fresh tab. This is an L. Lisitsky that I love. So this Picabia obviously looks quite a bit like my background. Is very up my alley, and we'll actually see some L. Lisitsky in this show in a little bit. Here we've got a Duchamp. Actually, Duchamp, of course, one of the famous modernists, Dadaists specifically. He's the guy who did the put a urinal just directly on a pedestal and called it art. He just like signed a name on it and was like, I just found this like disused urinal and I'm gonna put it on top of a pedestal. And again, this was like 100 years ago. Like again, this like really, really abstract, really, really conceptually strange art. He was doing this stuff like quite a while ago. But I think this is like a really nice little piece. It's a reproduction of a painting. Like he was doing like he was doing like cubist paintings. This is from the 30s. It's like a reproduction of one of his cubist paintings that he turned into like a postcard. Duchamp actually has like a really, really big retrospective on right now at I think it's at MoMA. I can't remember if it's at MoMA or the Met. I haven't been to it yet. Wherever it is, I need to get up there to see it. For the sake of it, we'll read the wall text for this one because it's like, I'm not a Duchamp expert, so let's read into how this specifies how it specifically fits into his larger practice, I suppose. Throughout his life, Marcel Duchamp relentlessly interrogated the nature of art through provocative gestures, some of which he termed anti-art. The most infamous of these are his ready-mades, which consisted of found objects, often mass-produced, which he designated as artworks. Duchamp first achieved notoriety for his paintings in the 1910s, which embraced Cubism's fragmenting of representation into a patchwork of planes and shared in Futurism's fascination with motion and machines. During this crucial period, Duchamp would develop a language of machinic objects derived from consumer objects, automobiles, technologies of modern warfare, and the impossible devices described in the works of writers like Raymond Roussel and Alfred Jarry. La Mariée, The Bride, from 1937, for example, depicts an abstract machine-like form rendered with careful precision. The painting is an artist-produced copy of a 1912 canvas, reflecting Duchamp's mechanized approach to his artistic production. The Bride reappears in the artist's legendary work, The Bride Stripped Bare by Her Bachelors, even, 1915 and 1923, also known as The Large Glass. The symbolic objects depicted in the work, which Duchamp described as bachelor machines, outlined a narrative of frustrated desire, onanistic pleasure, and the looming inevitability of death. In his private mythology of sentient sexual machines, Duchamp's bride is also a machine mother, birthing, in his own words, a headlight child, a machine with 5 hearts, the pure child of nickel and platinum. Like other fantasies of machine-human hybrids of the early 20th century, Duchamp's bachelor machines coalesce the collective fears and fantasies of technologies existing and yet to come. Yeah, so it's interesting to think about how like the futurists and the cubists were kind of like reflecting on this stuff like before and leading up to and kind of during World War One, right? And it's after World War One that you really get the Dadaists, which is like the really, really out there, really, really weird anti-art stuff. And I think like more explicitly was obsessed with the, I guess, like the anxieties of having seen how technology had changed the nature of warfare in World War One, kind of turned the whole world on its head, and it only made sense to them to kind of like make art that didn't make sense because the world itself no longer made sense. So anyway, that's Duchamp. Here's another angle on it. You'll also see that some of my color grading is going to be really, really weird. This is like a problem with modern day cell phones, is that like if you're using the default settings, which I do most of the time, they make a bunch of weird color assumptions, which leads to like the wall here looks very gray and the piece looks very yellow. Whereas here, the piece looks much more white and the wall looks almost blue. Yeah, this is a peculiarity of cell phone cameras. Sorry, everybody. This is also one of the advantages of taking multiple photos, though, is that we're going to like ideally get multiple perspectives on a piece. Anyway, next up, this is just a one I thought that was like kind of funny, kind of silly. This is a come on, zoom in phone. This is a Sarah Darate, a Belgian artist. Piece titled "Baby Being Born Out of a Computer." It's from 2024, so obviously the most recent piece we've seen by far. I thought it was really kind of funny and silly. I won't really linger on it. I think it's like, yeah, just I don't know, kind of like a funny, like weird. I don't want to accuse it of being low effort, but it is kind of in a way that I found kind of charming. This is a much cooler thing, I think. So, pardon me. I think one of the things that's most interesting about I love as a gesture in an exhibition when they choose to include non-art objects, which this is. Like, this is not an art. This is not a sculpture, I should say. This is not designed to be a sculpture. This is a medical prosthetic. Pardon me, everybody. So anyone who's seen Boardwalk Empire will certainly be familiar with what this sort of thing is. But this is an early medical prosthetic for a person who has some kind of like facial deformity, and the idea is that like they didn't necessarily have the means to permanently attach this to a person's face. So what it is that it's attached to the eyeglasses, and you wear the eyeglasses and it holds it close to your face. So this is a painted metal facial prosthesis, somewhere from World War I era. They date it somewhere between 1917 and 1920. This was loaned to the exhibition by the British Association of Plastic, Reconstructive, and Aesthetic Surgeons. Trained as a neoclassical sculptor, Anna Coleman Ladd is best remembered for the bespoke, hand-painted prosthetic masks she produced for soldiers wounded in World War I. The physical and psychological traumas wrought by technologically advanced warfare outpaced medical developments at the time. So those with injuries too drastic to be treated with plastic surgery were left with few options, and many depended on prostheses. In partnership with the American Red Cross, Ladd opened her Paris-based studio for portrait masks in late 1917, adapting techniques developed by sculptor Francis Derwent Wood's practice in London. Ladd and her assistants began making the process by carefully studying photographs of each soldier's face before the war. Working in dialogue with the veteran, the studio then constructed a unique mask from thin galvanized copper, which was then painted to match the skin tone and secured to the face with eyeglasses. These state-of-the-art prosthetics allowed the men to participate in public life, but also helped cover up the war's brutal effects. During the years she ran the workshop, Ladd oversaw the production of nearly 100 prostheses, a considerable number, yet not enough to provide for the nearly 2,000 French soldiers with severe facial injuries. Mask making ultimately proved a short-term endeavor for Ladd, who returned to the United States in 1919, and little is known about her longer-term experiences of the men who relied on her services. So a really interesting thing, and I think the idea of early prosthetics, the idea of this early kind of relationship of how do we maintain some kind of like normalcy of the body? How do we like recover and reclaim and like allow people to feel normal? And like, I don't know. I think it's an interesting gesture to include in the exhibition, and like the idea that the body has continuity with like non-organic substances. Obviously there were precursors to this kind of thing, like the stereotype of like a pirate peg leg, or like I don't know, like even an eye patch, like the idea of having an eye patch rather than just like having an open wounded like eye socket or something was like an early attempt at this. But this is like an elegant and kind of like artistic exploration of how to like blend in more readily, I suppose. And I think it's really cool that they put this in the exhibition. These are a couple of video stills. I didn't take a video of the video, but these are videos by Cao Fei, who's a artist from Guangzhou, China. Cool stuff. I like Cao Fei's work quite a bit. They're not AI, they're CGI. Cool, weird body technology stuff. I would say look into their work. You can probably find videos online, but because I didn't want to take a video of the video, we'll just move on for now. This is another room in the exhibition, so this is separate from the first room. I did take an overview shot because this room was one of the first rooms that like wasn't horribly crowded with people, and B, I think closer to being appropriate with the amount of work in the room. There were some cool pieces. I really like this like cage like thing on the left that has all of these like diagrammatic like footnotes floating off of it. I thought that was kind of neat. There's this corner video piece. Again, I didn't take a video of the video, but I did take I took a photo of its wall text over here. We'll get to that later. Also a nice sculpture here by Matthew Angelo Harrison, who's I think a very good artist. I didn't get a good photo of it, but I like Matthew's work a lot. And if I make more of these videos and we revisit the 2024 Whitney Biennial, he had a really amazing room with Isaac Julian, with a lot of his work. So we might get back around to that maybe at some point. We'll see. But yeah, I liked this room. I think this room is themed around dancers or dancing. Here we got some cool paintings. These are by Jacqueline Humphreys, whose work I initially encountered also last year. And I wasn't really familiar with her before, or at least I didn't think I was familiar with her work before. But our wall text, these are recent paintings, I should mention. This is from like 2024, 2025. But the wall text reads, in the early 2000s, painter Jacqueline Humphreys began making large-scale works inspired by the illumination of computer screens on users' faces. With silver and non-reflective black paints, her works reproduce the uncanny attraction we feel towards a monitor's artificial glow. Over the last decade, she has begun to incorporate languages and signs pilfered from technology, such as CAPTCHA, emoticons, and emojis, in an effort to further parse the terms of a painting's capacity as an interface both for the expression and disembodiment. For both expression and disembodiment, I should say. Some of her works are built on dense ground of symbols drawn from ASCII, like ASCII, a character-based encoding system invented for the electronic communication in the 1960s. Others are layered onto grids of neatly painted smiley face emoticons. Seen together appropriately, signs of the digital marks associated with the expressionistic take on an ambiguous tenor. An emoticon is a symbol both feeling and perfunctory emotion. Joy, laughter, friendliness, satisfaction, crankiness, boredom, but more often, nothing at all. In this painting, 321HJ, Humphreys makes use of AI as a tool for art making. As technology that mechanizes subjectivity, AI, in the context of painting, simulates the typical private language of gestural abstraction, suggesting the volatility of the unconsciousness in the machine. The dense materiality of Humphreys' work operates as a corrective to the idea that screen culture is purely virtual. As she says, painting is a machine for thinking. I guess it's not super clear to me how this incorporates AI, because the actual surface is like in person really quite intensely built up and intensely worked. I guess I wasn't aware of the fact that she was using AI either, because like the actual object really feels quite visceral in person. But I don't know. I wonder to what degree this is like a thing that's already like started to show up in certain places. I think in different modes of cultural production, that like there's so much hype around AI. I feel like a lot of artists and a lot of companies will periodically be like, "Oh yeah, we're using AI," but like they never really specify how. And I wonder if they actually are using AI at all, or if like they kind of naively think that claiming that they use AI makes them look better, when in reality, obviously, there's like a lot of rejection of AI, and a lot of people would agree that like the claim of using AI actually makes you look worse. But I don't know. It's like a funny thing, and I feel like this happened years ago with I guess it wasn't that long ago. It was maybe like 2 years ago. When the game Pal World came out, I remember that there was like this whole controversy about like the CEO claiming that they had used AI, and then like some number of people who had worked within the company were like, "Yeah, we actually don't use AI at all." Again, I don't know if it was ever confirmed. I guess like we can't necessarily like take the employee over the CEO or whatever, but like I think it's like a funny and strange complication that like this one employee like came forward and was basically like, yeah, we don't use AI at all. Like the AI, like the CEO is straight up just lying, because it like so many investors are so obsessed with AI that they felt like the CEO was like lying, claiming that they had used CGI or used AI when they absolutely had not. In this like weird misguided attempt to like appeal to investors. I can't necessarily know either way whether that's true in the case of Pal World. But I don't know. I think that you could see something similar with like contemporary artists, where I feel like some artists are like, oh yeah, I use like machine learning in my research practice, and like all that really means is that like I don't know, at some point they like consulted ChatGPT or something, but in reality, like they never actually like generated anything with AI. I don't know. Anyway, here we got some El Lisitskys. So I mentioned, yeah, my background is in El Lisitsky. These are like earlier ones, and I think they're kind of funny and cute and figurative. Like they have these like forms in them that like feel a little bit like bodies. Yeah, we have a little face over here, a little smiley face. I think these are beautiful. I love this kind of like loose, lightweight collage work. Like this one is obviously like three. This is obviously like three people, right? I think they're beautiful. I think they're well balanced. I love El Lisitsky's work though, so not too surprising. So yeah, these are El Lisitsky's from 1920, 1921. This is the video as well. So we got the video is by Daria Martin, Soft Materials. I won't go into it because I also didn't want to like video a video. The video also had nudity, so I don't want to mess with like risking my video. So we'll move on to a painting that doesn't have nudity. It's probably much safer for me to have. on stream. This is by Janiva Ellis, who's a painter I very much like. I really like. I guess I don't know if it's Geneva or Geneva, but it's Janiva. I've always liked her work quite a bit. It's a little bit like there's like some signifiers in it that are a little bit pop, a little bit like it reminds me a lot of like Chicago Imagists in ways. Like it's like a little loud and a little aggressive and a little ugly, and there's like cartooning in it. There's like a little bit of that kind of like pop art energy, but like not something quite so obvious as like integrating Mickey Mouse ears or something. I think it's a really cool painting. I know I've seen it before and I don't remember where, but I think her stuff is really cool. She's got like great surfaces, like all of this like paint play inside these big blocky colors. She like really lets the brushwork kind of have a field day. And then she's also like cartooning like hypothetical, like she's cartooning the image of brushwork, like in all this stuff that's happening in the skin that's like carefully controlled to like resemble brushwork when in reality it's like completely artificial. Whereas on the flip side, we see on the like bigger painting, like in the green, this is like actual brushwork, right? Like the all of this texture in here is like actual brushwork, as opposed to like this carefully controlled like Liechtenstein style like image of brushwork. So the title of this piece, for the sake of it, is Catchphrase Coping Mechanism. And I guess I don't want to read the full text. I kind of think that like it's better to just like take in this piece as it is. I think it's like a really nice painting. I have always liked her work, and she actually has a solo show. I think that's opening at I don't know if it's either Kunstmuseum Basel or the Bieler Foundation in Basel, but I'm going to be there for work in June. So I'm looking forward to catching a solo show of her work, solo museum show, no less. I've seen one solo show of her work in a gallery. I think it was at 47 Canal a few years ago, and I loved it. Again, I've loved her work in general for quite some time. But I'm excited to see a museum show of her work. Anyway, next up, we got this cool piece, which feels quite like recent in a way. Like when I initially approached this, I was kind of thinking like, okay, is this a piece from like the 80s or the 90s or even more recent than that? It like there's a lot of artists today who are doing these like woven carpet pieces because you can like do them with digital looms, right? And like digital looms make this sort of making very, very easy. And a lot of artists are doing like, you can just like plug a photo into a program and have it printed out as like a woven carpet. But I thought this is really cool. Like the figures are cool, but I also like, I like a lot of these forms, like in the sky and like some of the abstract stuff that's happening down here. I think is quite neat. Here we get a little bit more up close texture of some of this, but I was really impressed to learn this is actually from 1951. That really surprised me. It's from 1951 by Hannah Regan. I don't know, from Sweden. Apparently, the title is Atomson, Mr. Atom, from 1951. And our wall text reads, trained as a painter, Hannah Regan began weaving after marrying fellow artist Hans Regan and moving to a farm on Norway's western coast. So she's from Sweden, but apparently lived in Norway. Using a loom handmade by her husband, Regan worked self-sufficiently, carding and spinning wool from the family's sheep and producing botanical dyes made with plants she foraged. In the environment, Regan developed a textile practice that sensitively captured the urgent social and political issues of her time, including the devastating effects of the Great Depression, fascism's rise across Europe, and the post-war threat of nuclear annihilation. Inspired by the modern artistic experimentation and regional folk art, Regan's large-scale narrative tapestries protest oppressive conditions and political violence. completed in the wake of the U.S. bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki a few years after the formation of the. Let me restart that paragraph. Completed in the wake of the U.S. bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and a few years after the formation of the International Military Alliance NATO, Atomson addresses the developing Cold War nuclear arms race. The central figure's shirt is marked in the Norwegian title HKH Atomson, an honorific reserved for royalty, His Royal Highness in English. The satirical moniker references the omnipotence of nuclear superpowers, all led by men. Crowned with a halo of particles, Mr. Atom sits cross-legged, lording over his kingdom. Below him, a man and a woman standing naked and exposed, recalling the creation myth of Adam and Eve, which Reagan transforms into a cautionary story of humanity's destruction. Having survived the carnage of 2 world wars and Nazi occupations of Norway, Reagan calls attention to the dangers of history repeating itself. So for the sake of it, Reagan was born in 1894. So yeah, she lived through both world wars, and she was already 57. 1 second. How can I do math? I can do math. She would have been 51 years plus 6 years, 57. Yeah, she would have been 57 when she made this. Really cool piece. Really nice. Love to see fiber art in an exhibition in general. These are some cool computer printout works. Also quite earlier than you might think. But like they're a little bit abstract, but some of them have like figures in them. I think they're really quite beautiful, and they're obviously like quite rudimentary by modern standards. But I was really quite impressed to learn these are from the 80s. So using a digital printer and like computers for making in the 80s was quite ahead of its time. Here's another one, also quite abstract, 84. You can see it's signed. There's some, looks like the globe split across both sides, but we also have these like abstract geometric forms in the center that feel quite woven. So these are by Charlotte Johansson, also from Sweden, from Malmo. These are all from 1984, except a couple from 1986 and a couple, 3 from 1984, 1 from 1986, 2 that are marked 1981-1986, and 1 from 1983. Computer graphics plotted on paper. After studying applied textile crafts in her hometown of Malmo, Sweden, Charlotte Johansson, or Johansson presumably, began creating irreverent textiles in the late 1960s out of whatever material she had on hand. Johansson's virtuosity with looms uniquely prepared her for exploring the artistic potential presented by early personal computers. The first computing machines were in fact inspired by Jacquard looms, which is operated by a succession of punched cards. In 1968, Johansson bartered her loom for a computer that could generate pixels at a resolution of 239 pixels by 191 pixels, almost identical to the dimensions used by her loom. Several years later, Johansson and her husband, Stur, opened an experimental workshop called Digital Theater and purchased an Alpha 2 Plus computer. Johansson developed 4 color compositions, Sturm programmed them into a computer, and Plotter slowly printed the images one color at a time. Thus, the experimental design impulses underlying Johansson's earlier textiles were deftly translated into the new medium. Some works, like the entirely abstract Texture 8 from 1986, directly reference computing prehistory and textile object. Others take a more figurative or textual track. One psychedelically vibrant graphic development from 1984 depicts a figure seated at a computer, and a zigzag, symbol for electrical current, connects the computer with a neuron on top right of the image. While the pictorial elements are common motifs in the artist's computer graphics, this particular image captures Johansson's enthusiasm for the creative possibilities of cybernetic technologies. So I presume that's this one here, maybe? Might be a different one, but similar as a notion. And yeah, so this is addressing like this very explicit history of fiber art and computer art are like very, very fundamentally connected with each other. If anyone isn't familiar with that history, it is summarized here, but basically in the 1700s and 1800s, looms became increasingly complex, and they would use these punch cards that the different layers and levels of the loom's threads, which ones would be engaged, um, would be determined by a series of holes in a punch card, right? And the idea is that it would like block certain ones from rising and lock other ones into position, and that would determine like what colors on a specific line would be used. And they developed these mechanical systems where a series of punch cards in order would loop. Like, let's actually we'll run over to our um punch card loom. They developed these, yeah, here we go, these sequences of punch cards that would also have a series of sequences that would be like, okay, it would basically have a mechanical, I wouldn't say instruction, but a mechanical imperative, basically, to be like, okay, this will repeat a certain number of times until after a certain amount of time, the mechanical tool would be fundamentally forced to push on to the next card, which then would have its own set of instructions and would then force into the next thing. So you'd get these, like, you could get these patterns to be printed, and it would understand what change would come next, and that would like allow a different thing to be printed. And what's wild about these things is that because these could be reproduced, you could have multiple looms outputting the same design at the same time. But also, if you had different looms in different places, you could reproduce these punch card sequences and also have, like, you could sell them. Like a textile designer could like sell a design to like a different fabricator, and this is different from like this kind of like manual loom, right? Like like these manual looms historically were really, really, really time intensive. And I don't know, it's so cool to me that like this is basically the foundation of computers. Like, computers as a technology, period, are like born out of this theory. And like the early computation machines, like the code breaking machines and stuff that were used in like World War II, are like direct descendants of this technology. So anyway, yeah, the fact that this in the show sort of made sense as like a piece of technological history. We got this just kind of neat sculpture by ACM, born Alfred Corinne Marier. Reclusive sculptor ACM, once a house painter, used his father's former weaving workshop as a studio, assembling various parts of machinery, transistors, wire circuits, similar components from disused typewriters, broken clocks, and other discarded technology. The artist would clean, sand, or corrode with acid, deform them, fuse them with wood, plaster, and other found objects to create intricate bricolage constructions. What resulted was nothing short of a multidimensional world building. ACM's assemblages resemble not only closed circuit machines that seem ready to whir to life, but also that portend what might rise from our technological society's industrial detritus. So yeah, these born in 1951. It doesn't say when this is from. No date. I thought it was just like a neat sculpture. It reminds me a little bit of a model, but it's also very Cronenbergian. It reminds me of like the gun from Existenz. That movie is great if anyone hasn't seen it. And obviously I'm not taking photos of everything, but like you can see there's other art in the background here. This is like one of the most crowded rooms in the show, and I only took pictures of a few things because it was just like overwhelming, kind of. And this is why I was critical of that stairwell at the beginning. We've got a painting here by Toyin Oggi Odutola. I'm familiar with her work a little bit. They had 4 or 5 paintings in this room. I just took a photo of this one, but I wanted to move on. Couple of cool paintings by Jamie and Giuliano Vigliani. Um, so Jamie's work is kind of controversial. Like I feel like she's kind of like a love it or hate it kind of person. Um, I have photos of her show at Gagosian the other year. I have a lot of complex thoughts about her practice. I don't really want to get into it here because it's going to be like a really long tangent. I also think that she's like I think she has a weird relationship with painting in general that I find kind of like strange and hard for me to like rationalize. And like, I remember on Instagram, she like went around to a bunch of shows and she like, she went to this show by this artist I know who I like his work. I don't love his work, but I think he's like a pretty good painter. And she was like mega negative about it in a way that I found like kind of off-putting, in a way that was kind of like I wasn't sure how to like rationalize the fact that she herself is this like controversial painter. It felt very strange to me that she took this like particularly hardline tack against this guy, um, where she basically like responded to the show being like, "The show is so bad. I presume that this is like a joke being played on me." Like that was like her phrasing of like hating the show was to say, as said, basically like she basically said like, this show is so bad, either it's like a cruel joke on the part of the gallery, like it's like mean that the gallery allowed the artist to put this into the world, or this is like a joke that the artist is playing on their own gallery by giving them like the worst paintings possible. And that felt like a really mean spirited, obviously like it's a really intense criticism, but like I don't know. I like these 2 paintings. I think they're fun. I think they're funky. The one on the left is just like a well rendered image of vintage tech, and that's kind of nice. The one on the right, I think, is like fun and silly, where it's like presumably I think that's like the walkway from like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then it has this like silly kind of like tacky text overlaid on top of it. I don't fully know how to like resolve the juxtaposition, I guess. Um, but like this weird mix of like nostalgia and kitsch and camp and um like what is good taste, I guess, is kind of interesting about these pieces, and I think that like resounds through like a lot of her practice. um but I think that's maybe also why I think it's like funny. I guess I found it particularly strange that she had such an intense reaction to that one show, is that like so many of her paintings are like well rendered but like exist in the space of bad taste. It was really strange to me that she took such like strong objection to this other painting show, and felt the need to like shit on it as like, oh, this is so obvious, this must be bad on purpose. I think that's really, really strange when you look at a lot of the rest of her art that, again, is like well rendered, but is so fundamentally about bad taste. Um, I can't fully rationalize, I guess, the what she's attempting to say by like accusing someone else, or like accusing some other scenario as being quote unquote like intentionally bad. Um, because I don't think that she wasn't saying it in like a complimentary way. She was actually like attacking the show. Anyway, um, So here's our actual show text at the exit of the second floor. So, New Humans, Memories of the Future. We'll read it together, I suppose. New Humans, Memories of the Future explores artists' enduring preoccupation with what it means to be human in the face of sweeping technological change. The show traces a diagonal history of the past 100 years through the work of more than 200 international artists, writers, scientists, architects, and filmmakers, highlighting key historical moments that spurred new connections of humanity and new visions for its possible futures. Seen through the lens of today, these artists offer proposals that resonate with our contemporary fears and aspirations around technology, but also document dreams of futures that never occurred. New Humans establishes a symmetry between early 20th century and the present. The former period saw the first appearance of the term robot and the rise of automated factory labor, along with the emergence of mechanized warfare and the explosion of new media. These phenomena are echoed through today's disruptive diffusion of AI, the brutal efficiency of contemporary warfare, and the apparatuses of misinformation that characterize the digital age. The early avant-garde imagined a variety of mechanical offspring, children born without mothers, reflecting with both wonder toward new technology and the looming specter of fascism. These children of the machine inaugurated a terrifying new world where technological and political upheavals would prompt the birth of surprising new forms of humanity. The post-World War II period saw the emergence of a more monstrous form of figuration in response to the horrors of the Holocaust and the devastation of the atomic bomb. New Humans highlights the tension between a pristine, engineered human of the future and the kinds of bodies warped and broken by technologically amplified violence. It also considers the myriad bodies who fall outside the techno-utopian vision, where aberration and an embrace of non-human relationships with other species in the natural world suggest a radically liberatory potential. The exhibition offers prototypes of beings able to navigate an uncertain future and visualizes the spaces in which new forms may thrive. New Humans considers how scientific advances have reconfigured representations of the human body, offering portraits of life from the embryonic stage to emerging post-human bodies. The characters that populate the exhibition range from, what is that word? Sleek. Sorry, it's a little blurry. Automatons to human-animal hybrids and states of transformation. Through this archive of evolving human forms, comprising materials that range from book illustrations and reproductions to multimedia installations to paintings and sculptures, the show highlights how machines have profoundly altered humanity's understanding of labor, gender, collectivity, intelligence, and creativity. The artworks brought together by this exhibition offer innumerable possibilities for the humans we may become. So yeah, I think that's like I had a less blurry text that I could have shown instead. Sorry, I guess I forgot that I took a second photo. Let's continue through, I suppose. We have 2 floors left to get through, and I imagine this is taking a little, I'm going a little bit slower than I thought I was going to go, so this might end up just being a video about the new museum show, and then maybe we'll do another video at some other point about some of the galleries that I saw, as well as the Whitney Biennial. I think this is just a nice painting. I rather like it. It's by Paul Tabouret, apparently, Mudfield from 2023. I think that's just a nice painting. This is a cool video installation. I rather liked this. I don't like taking videos of videos for the most part, but this is this room where behind me there was all these projections of like the forest, basically. And then there were some sculptures, and then there was this video that was documentary footage, and it was like interviewing people who were involved with this like political liberation organization called the Tamil Tigers. And apparently the Tamil people are like they're like an ethnic minority within Sri Lanka. And this was like an exploration of discussion with some of these people, as well as some other people in orbit with them. So it was like a documentary presented on this like multi-panel, like strange reflective object. So the title of this was The Finesse, and the wall text notes: Christopher Kolandran Thomas is a diasporic Tamil artist whose family left Sri Lanka amidst escalating violence between the armed forces of the Sinhalese majority state and militant groups in the Tamil majority regions. Due to discriminatory state policies, Tamil insurgents began demanding autonomy from Sri Lanka in the 1970s. Since the defeat of the insurgency in 2009, however, its radical imaginations have been suppressed from official memory. Galendra Thomas's practice reinvigorates these imaginations and refuses historical erasure. The Finesse is his second work in an ongoing series of multimedia installations that critique the philosophical foundations of the nation-state and the fiction of the human on which it is predicated amid recent technological developments. At the center of the video installation are sculptures of large figures in ghillie suits and video projections onto several adjacent mirrored screens, which produce fragmented images. The video slips between original archival and AI-generated footage, blurring the boundaries between fact and fabulation. In addition to deepfake Kim Kardashian, who ruminates on the power of media environments to construct truth and shape identity, the video has two main protagonists. First, an architect-turned-soldier fighting for the Tamil independence, who articulates her vision of a truly democratic world in an interview seemingly filmed decades ago. And second, a young Tamil dancer who reflects on the present upon her experience growing up in the diaspora. For both characters, technology presents the possibility of sovereignty and belonging beyond the nation-state, insofar as it enables individuals to flexibly form, join, and leave communities oriented around shared values and narratives. It was a cool piece. The interview with the person who was talking about like the definition of democracy, I thought was like a particularly interesting part of the video. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I thought it was really interesting. I guess they like talked about the nature of like, this is something that we have happen in America every once in a while. Like, what's the difference between a democracy and a republic and a democratic republic? And she was kind of like pushing, like, if you think about like republic, democratic republic, and democracy in spectrum with each other, she was like pushing past, like further along that trajectory, along like what is like the next logical step past democracy in a sense. And she was kind of like, I guess kind of like articulating ideas around like, what does it mean like for a democracy to allow, like how can we like rationalize the fundamental problem of democracies possibly being tyranny of the majority? And instead she kind of postulates that like, for true democracy to function, there has to be self-determination. And that basically means that like, if like a minority wants to like refuse participation in the nation state, that has to be allowed for democracy to be anything other than tyranny of the majority. It's an interesting and complicated topic because on the one hand, I do think it's like a compelling statement. On the other hand, I do think this is also like, right, this is like sort of one of the fundamental tensions that underlies like the American cultural narrative around the Confederacy. And it's like, if someone doesn't want to participate in the Union, like, should they be allowed to leave? Is a problem. Anyway, sorry. Replying to a text. I thought it was cool. This is a nice painting. I like this painting. Looks like a goose. This is by Miriam Cohn, apparently. I thought this was a very nice painting as well. This is like one of the best paintings in the whole exhibition. This is another overly crowded room. This is a painting by Bertina Lopez, apparently. Really, really nice painting. I have some detail photos of the surface. Like, look at this. Like, not only do you have these like sgraffito marks like dragging back through what looks like gesso, but like the actual tool that was used to make those marks is also embedded in the canvas, right? So it's like we dragged this like hay or straw or whatever it is through the paint, and then we've like stuck it into the surface of the canvas. That's really quite nice. A lot more of these like reductive sgraffito marks also like dragging through the paint in a really beautiful way. But there's also these like more impasto gestures as well. Really, really, really nice painting. Oh, this is a lovely piece as well. Just nice surface textures, nice surface colors by John McHale, apparently. Early Francis Bacon. No, it's actually late Francis Bacon. I was initially, it looks so reserved. I was thinking that it was early, but I guess I misremembered. I guess they couldn't get a big one loaned for the exhibition. Sorry. Lovely piece, though. Really nice painting by Francis Bacon. I thought this was a really cool sculpture. Really cool, really weird, really gross. Has a light in it. Like cool, strange body object by... can I rotate? This is one of the problems with Linux, right? Oh, we can. Okay, good. By Alina Serpochnikov. I thought that was a lovely object. This is a great Barbara Chase Ribaude. I love Barbara Chase Ribaude, so I'm always happy to see her work. This one's more explicitly body-like than a lot of her other pieces. A lot of her other pieces clearly reference the body, right? Because they're like very often like intestinal or kind of like yonic, or like they have like organ functions, but they're not often pictures of like whole bodies. And this to me feels very figurative. By the great Barbara Chase Ribaude, who is still with us. Born in 1939, so late 80s now, moving towards 90. This was a very cool painting. Another one that I thought was really, really quite lovely. Great textures. Great layering, great patience. This is by Natsuyuki Nakanishi, apparently. I'm not familiar with their work, but we'll go back around to them. This is a beautiful room, one of the best rooms in the whole exhibition. These great like brushed steel pieces on the wall, like they don't have paint on them. They're just like scratched or like burnished steel in some capacity or another. And then these cool, funny little architectural models floating in the center room. I thought they were beautiful. I think it's like a really nice juxtaposition to have these like really delicate, almost invisible, but like sort of architectural wall works in combination with these like very, very futuristic and like impossible kind of maquettes. So center of the room, the maquettes are by Giula Giula or Giula Kosice? Kosis? I'm not sure. And then the steel wall works are by Wang Shui. Very cool. Fourth floor was my favorite part of the show. Really, really cool. We had all of these architectural models at the center. We had a multimedia installation, this big comic piece running the wall, and this floating like octopus jellyfish robot sculpture. We'll get a little bit of it in a minute. Here's another view. This is the other side of the wall. More maquettes, models, toy-like things, and continuity of this huge comics piece. This was a funny kinetic sculpture as well, like it rotated, and I thought it was rather beautiful. So this is called Alien Technology Tower by Monira Al-Qadiri. Really nice piece. Really nice object. Really beautiful. The fact that it had this like pearlescent paint where different colors came out of it as it moved was really quite lovely, because it obviously it does move. It didn't just move. You didn't need to move around it. It would kind of rotate and spin and do all of these things. Here's some really beautiful architectural drawings as well that I was really quite taken with. These are by Ayakov Chernikov. Yeah, I just think these are beautiful. I took a lot of photos, obviously, because I like the whole set. Here's the whole set and sequence. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit now, but I'm realizing I'm like kind of low blood pressure, not low blood pressure, low blood sugar, and I'm like, I shouldn't have streamed without having eaten anything today. So I think we're going to get through the new museum. I'll try to be kind of quick about it, and then we might come back around to this and stream some more and do gallery shows later. But let's just we'll power through the last few things. Here are some great paintings by Cuigier. I really like Cuigier's work. I've been familiar with it for about 10 years now. They're just like really beautiful paintings, and they're so slick and almost digital looking at a distance, right? But when you get up close to them, they actually have a lot of paint texture. Like they have a lot of surface play that is like organic and painterly, which is quite impressive considering, again, how digital they feel on approach. But I've liked Cuigier's work for a long time. Here's that cool comic piece I mentioned. These are like really fabulous, really like, I don't know. I think they're quite silly. I think they're like quite beautiful. They engage with architecture in an interesting way as well, where there's like a lot of this like repetitious, like you can see all these buildings and all this traffic and like it's like the like redundancy of modern day life with all these cars and all these buildings and all these desks and all these workers who are driving the same thing. I also love this installation choice that like the corner pieces are like spanning the corner. And yeah, you get this again. You get all these like identical workers at desks. Like the anxiety of the monotony of modern life is like present in these pieces. I thought they were really, really very, very good. These are cool. I just thought they were like beautiful little kind of abstract gestures. Seher Shah's incomplete measures. Electric Labyrinth is one of these like fun maquettes. I think they're really quite beautiful, really vibrant, really playful, very toy-like, very like kid punk. Just like so many colors, so many textures, really fun, really cool. And we also got Ville Fantôme, Ghost Town by Boris Isaac Kingles. And then these maquettes as well on the other side of the comic presentation, which are by Constant, which is apparently a group. Oh, actually, no, it's not. Constant Neuvenhuis. Neuya. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I apologize. I'm not great with Dutch. Well, yeah, part of Cobra, Copenhagen, Brussels, Amsterdam design group. Very famous. More of the comic. The comic, for the sake of it, is by Harrison Pushwagner from Oslo. Some great book illustrations. These are really quite beautiful. These are an adaptation of War of the Worlds by Henrik Alvim Kaya. More of those maquettes. More book illustrations. Really beautiful. I wish it was easier to photograph them, but with the reflections, it's quite difficult. These are by Hugh Ferris. This I thought was a neat little sculpture. It's kind of like a picture of a body. We get these like almost medical like drawings in combination with all their functions. I thought it was a nice object. This is by Enrique Castro Cid. I thought this sculpture is awesome. This is like one of my favorite things in the whole exhibition. This piece is so good. Yeah, straight on from the side. These are by Ivana Basic. From Belgrade. Yeah, Serbia. This thing is so cool. Very, very H.R. Geiger, which is appropriate because there is also an H.R. Geiger sculpture later in this exhibition, so we'll get to that soon. This is a cool, funny video. Do I have a video of it? I guess maybe not. I thought I took a video of this piece, but funny video of this lady walking around. I think what was happening was that it was a real video of a real woman in a real space, but the sculptures were all CGI, which was a little uncanny. I think that's how it was done. It was kind of hard to tell. We'll run around back to the video and if we find it. But this is by Lily Renovated. Here's another side of that video, or of that sculpture that I like. We got a Jordan Wolfson sculpture up above. Here's our H.R. Geiger. We'll get back around to it. This is also part of the fourth floor. This is just this area that had the pink carpet. Really cool sculpture. I rather like this one. Also suspended from the ceiling by Lee Bull, whose work I'm familiar with, but I wasn't familiar with them doing these. I was more familiar with them doing these. Maybe I'm misremembering, but these like installation pieces that have these like big curved stainless steel plates. This is also an awesome sculpture that I like completely failed to take a photograph of. But the key thing to understand is that like this cyborg lady with the snake and the wall or whatever, she's suspended, floating above the floor. So her chin is resting on this plate that's hung from the ceiling. And this is by Andro Wekua, who is apparently Georgian. But I thought this piece is so cool, so strange, so unpleasant to see. And here's our Geiger. Yeah, H.R. Geiger. So it is the xenomorph, and like Geiger is actually like works with some galleries. Like besides being like a guy who made stuff for movies, he did also like make art objects, and he's like represented by a gallery here in New York called Lomex. And yeah, they've gotten his stuff into like some museum shows recently, which I'm really happy to see, because it's like obviously like incredibly important to pop culture history, but also just like cultural history in general. Like I think that like his visualizations of sci-fi are like really, really important to our cultural consciousness. So I'm happy they included that. And that's, I guess, the last of my new museum photos. I'm sorry I'm rushing towards the end, but like the low blood sugar is hitting me hard right now because I haven't eaten all day. So yeah, new museum. After this, we get into some gallery show stuff, and it's like, we will come back around to this because I think it's nice to see some gallery shows, and I'd love to talk about what's happening in galleries right now. But we'll come back around to this in another video. Sorry to rush off, everybody, but the low blood sugar's hitting hard, and yeah, I think it's time for me to skedaddle. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope it was interesting. It's good for me to like revisit all these photos and like recite the names out loud again to like remind myself what I saw, what I liked, what I found interesting. And I hope anyone who watches this finds some of it interesting too. We'll dig back in some other time when I don't feel so faint. So anyway, I'll eat some food, and that'll make me feel better. Have a good day, everybody. We'll stream again some other time soon, I'm sure. Okie doke.